If you're getting ready to collect data at your field trip to an amusement park, one of the apps that you might consider downloading is Physics Toolbox Sensor Suite. We have a version for Android which is much more robust, and then we also have one for iOS. For now, I'm going to show you what the Android has. When I open this up, you can see I've already been playing with it, but when you open it up, you will probably see a menu here off to the side, and there's lots of different things that your phone can collect for you, all different types of sensor information. At an amusement park, you're probably interested in things that tell you about your force, tell you about motion. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a G-force meter. G-force tells you a little bit about your relative motion, but it's not quite a measure of force, and nor is it quite a measure of gravity. If you want to know more about specifically what G-force means, talk to your teacher or check out this little button right here. It's got an eye with a circle around it. It has just a little bit of information. So please check that out. Something else that might be of interest for collecting data on is acceleration. That literally just tells you what your linear acceleration is with respect to the surface of the Earth. And so right now it looks like it's moving around, but the moment that I start shaking my phone, you can see that really what looked like a lot of data was really just a little bit of lack of precision or high sensitivity, basically, when I'm holding it in my hand, which is not perfectly still. Beyond that, you can also collect gyroscope information, which tells you about your angular velocity. It basically tells you if your smartphone or your mobile device is spinning along any axis. And the last one that's probably of interest is the barometer, which tells you about the pressure. You can find out the altitude that you're at various points throughout a ride. And so when your barometric pressure is low, that tells you you're probably high, maybe at the top of a loop or even at the start of a roller coaster. When the pressure is high, it means that you're down near the bottom at a low point. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can collect and record the data. You can collect any of these things individually, but let's say you wanted to collect multiple pieces of information. One of the options is to scroll down to the multi-record and collect anything you want. You might even consider, for example, collecting magnetic field data in case you happen to be on a ride that might be using magnets or induction in order to accelerate you. The other alternative is to click on roller coaster, which will collect for you G-force data, pressure, as well as gyroscope. And for this, to record, it's very simple. Please be very safe whenever you're using your mobile device to collect data on a ride. Please make sure you follow park policies and make sure that your smartphone is firmly secured on your body. Don't ever take it out in order to press on a button or anything like that. You can always start collecting your data and stop collecting your data before and after you get on the ride. So for now, what you have to do is to press on that red button. Data recording will have started. You see a little notice that popped up a few seconds ago at the bottom of the screen. And when you're done collecting the data, all you have to do is to press the stop button. At this point, you would simply enter in a file name and hit OK. And not only is this stored to your SD card so that you can actually take a cable, for example, and just transfer that information directly to a computer in order to print the data through a spreadsheet file. You can also send it to yourself as an email, or you could even share it to your drive. So use any of those processes in order to get that data to yourself. Now the other option is to always pause the data and simply take a screenshot. Just make sure that you zoom in to the appropriate part of the graph that you're interested in. So hopefully at this point you've collected some data using Physics Toolbox Sensor Suite. And there are a couple of different things that you might have done. You might have just simply saved the data to your SD card and then downloaded that .csv file onto your computer, or you might have exported it using Google Drive or sending it through to your email. Now, if you're interested in analyzing the data, like getting actual values at certain points, and you really want precision on that, you'll want to input it into something like a spreadsheet, like what I've got here, which is Excel or Google Sheets, whatever you happen to like. That allows you to do some data analysis. It could be Logger Pro, Graphical Analysis, Data Studio, all those kinds of things. So what I'd like to show you is how to graph the data. So when you get your data, the first column here is going to be time, and you should have nice titles for each of these columns. They might look a little bit different from what I have here. Just be cautious because the G, X, G, Y, and GZ, those all correspond to gyroscope, not to G-force. And the X, Y, and Z in this case represent the different axes. So for the G-force, that's what is being felt in those particular dimensions. I also want to just put a note here that I like to use G-force, and in Physics Toolbox we like to use G-force for roller coasters in particular because it tends to tell us a little bit more about how we feel. Now if you have questions about what G-force actually means, because it's neither a force nor a measure of gravity, talk to your teacher. I'll give you a little hint here and say that if you draw force diagrams on your body or on the smartphone, G-force will make more sense to you than if you don't. Now, if you're interested in getting linear acceleration values, use the multi-record function instead of the roller coaster function in Physics Toolbox Sensor Suite, and just make sure that you select linear acceleration. So let's just say I wanted to plot these all on a graph. Now, we just want to be cautious because all these numbers are really tiny. But here's the pressure data. It's actually huge in comparison. So it wouldn't be smart to try to plot all of these things onto a single graph. For now, I'm going to just focus on the time and all of the information about G-force and rotational velocity. So I'm going to select all of those. I'm going to go up to Insert. I'm going to click on Charts and Scatter Plot. Now, if I choose something like the dots, you can see that it's quite messy. So I'm actually going to delete this, and I'm going to try a different type of graph. I'm still going to use a scatter plot, but I'm going to actually just have lines connecting the dots. And I know normally we say in science that that's not a good practice, but we actually have so many dots that you really can't see like straight lines at all. So here we go. I've inserted it, and now it should look pretty much like what you've seen on the screen of your smartphone. And as you can see, the data is not perfect. We don't necessarily have so many data points that it's a smooth curve, but for us, this should be just fine. Now what we've got here, within programs like Excel, it doesn't necessarily automatically put axis titles for you, so you'd have to do that. The axis title down here would be time, and in this case we happen to measure in seconds. And the axis title over here, it's all going to be whatever measurement value corresponds to the different colors. And there's a little key down here that helps you see what is what. So it's either G-force or gyroscope measurements in the X, Y, and Z component. Now, if you wanted to do any kind of analysis like find averages, maxes, or mins, you'd have to do whatever your software requires you to do in order to accomplish those things. Now, let's say I wanted to get data on the time, and I'm going to use Control and select my pressure data, and I'm going to go ahead and get myself another graph of just pressure versus time, and here it is. And now if we wanted to sort of look at this data side by side or compare up and down, I guess, I just spread this out, and we happen to have data collected over the same time intervals, 0 to 16 seconds and 0 to 16 seconds. So now we can match these things up and see if we see any interesting kinds of movements. Now again, I was not on a roller coaster when I did this. I simply shook my smartphone up and down. So we're not seeing necessarily a strong coordination between pressure or altitude, for example. Pressure in this case kind of represents altitude because as you go up, the pressure becomes less, and so you know that your altitude is greater. And we're not seeing necessarily a correspondence, but if you're going through a loop and you see significant acceleration changes, you're also probably going to see big changes in pressure as you go up and down that loop. So that might be able to give you some sense of where you are on the roller coaster and what's happening to your body. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Please feel free to reach out at any point at support@verasoftware.net, and have a great time and be safe on those rides.